This is the In Focus podcast from The Hindu.
Sampras versus Agassi, Borge versus McEnroe, Connors versus Lendl, and of course, Federer versus Nadal versus Djokovic. Men's tennis has been defined by legendary rivalries. For nearly 2 decades, the big three, that is Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, and Novak Djokovic, treated us to unforgettable clashes on the sport's biggest stages. That era has finally passed, and a new duopoly is taking center stage.
I'm seeing you more than my family, so it's Jesus. So it's.
Hello and welcome to the Hindu's In Focus podcast. I'm your host, Reuben Joseph. Today we delve into the exciting rivalry between Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner, two men who have split the last 8 Grand Slams evenly between them in 2024 and 2025. A few days ago, Alcaraz defeated Sinner in the final of the US Open.
In a sensationally bold and brawny...
A fitting end to this year's battle between them. Remarkably, they became the first men in history to contest 3 major finals in a single calendar year. So what makes this rivalry so compelling? Will their dominance shape the ATP Tour for years to come? And what does it mean for men's tennis as a whole? To help us unpack the Sincaraz craze, we're joined by Sudarshan from the Hindu Sports Bureau. Sudarshan is a seasoned tennis journalist who's been covering the game for over a decade and was even courtside this year at this year's Wimbledon, where Sinner edged out Alcaraz. Welcome, Sudarshan. It's a pleasure to have you today.
Thanks so much, Reuben. It's a pleasure for me too.
So, Sudarshan, we talk of 2-horse races in various sports, but this rivalry between these two is turning out to be quite fascinating, isn't it? It's 2 different styles of play, different personalities, different types of physiques, all of which I think in some ways, for me, reminiscent of maybe the Nadal-Djokovic battles of the 2010s. So how has this rivalry really evolved over these past few years?
I think the past couple of years has been really cat and mouse, I would say. On a numbers metric, it's loaded in Alcaraz's favor. I think he leads 10-5 now, which to the layperson will seem like a commanding lead in a head-to-head statistic. But I feel the 10-5 number is pretty deceptive. If you see before the US Open, recent US Open, at Wimbledon, Sinner was the better player. At US Open, Alcaraz was the better player. And prior to that, if you see the Roland Garros clay, Sinner came within a point of winning the match thrice. And even before that, at Rome, it was an extremely tight first set. So there have been a lot of tight matches. And even Beijing 2024, which Alcaraz won, it was 2 tiebreak sets out of 3. And the third set was again a tiebreak. So even as the 10-5 number looks like a big lead for Alcaraz, I feel it's pretty deceptive. We can put it as even Stevens still, even though it's 10-5.
Yeah, that 10-5 is quite deceptive because I was reading one statistic that said the difference in points between them is like only some 6 points, something over the many matches that they've played. But I guess even that is deceptive on some level. But yeah, let's take a look at them individually. We'll start with Alcaraz. He has 6 slams already at the age of 22, and probably years ago, many people rightly predicted that he would be one of the successors for the big three, and he seems to be getting better and even fitter day by day with his wide range of shots are surprising opponents. So how has he sort of grown into this big shoes that he's filling?
So when you want to sort of compare the two as players, it's pretty evident that Alcaraz is the one who loves the theater. The shots he plays, or at least the kind of shots he tries, are pretty spectacular. And he doesn't have the height advantage that Sinner has. I mean, he's still 6 foot, but is not as towering as the other guys. Maybe a couple of inches. A couple of inches actually makes a huge difference to one serve. But he is a very effective server. And one of the problems at Wimbledon final, which he lost to Sinner, was he couldn't serve as well. But he does have an efficient technique. And Sinner, in contrast, like I think has been guilty of being stereotyped into being very mechanical, precise, but he is an attacking player. We shouldn't forget it that he is also an attacking player, not in the mold as Alcaraz, but there is a subtle difference because when you look at a baseliner like Djokovic, he is more of a defensive baseliner, I would say, which Andre Agassi quantifies as what you do with the return. Like Djokovic's first shot on a return is to neutralize the rally, but Sinner takes up very aggressive positions. He wants to win the point with the return. So there is a subtle difference between baseliners, and Sinner is of the aggressive category. So I would say that both Alcaraz and Sinner are aggressive players, but Alcaraz is more flashy, while Sinner has a more repeatable technique and might do the same thing from a similar position to win the point, which is proved successful in the past. Whereas Alcaraz, popular perception at least, is that he has two shots for every ball.
Right. And like you were saying, there is this perception that Sinner is a more mechanical guy. I think even you had mentioned that in a piece that you wrote on him. But he's sort of seen as this no frills guy, and probably considered one of the fastest and stronger hitters of the tennis ball today, right?
Yeah, I think if you look at both, they have taken the tennis physicality to such an insane level. Like I think the previous generation, the big three generation, Djokovic was the one who lifted everything and forced both Federer and Nadal to sort of reach his level to at least compete with him on level terms. But these two have actually taken it to a much higher level. So when you see the physicality of the French Open final, it was 5.5 hours. And at the end of the 5.5 hours, also, they were hitting shots that you would normally see people hitting in the first game of the match or the first set of the match when both their mind and body is still pretty fresh. So the physicality part is just gone up several notches, I would say. And combining the physicality with their shot production, with the quality of the shots, I don't think we have seen something like this ever before.
Yeah, and even though I think Sinha has mentioned that his favorite court is the favorite surface is the hard court, but I think impressive turns at the French Open and Wimbledon he has now really taken the challenge to Alcaraz in that sense, right?
That's what I sort of meant by cat and mouse, and that is what might stand this rivalry the test of time as well. Because though Sinner said he was being predictable, I think we should give him the benefit of the doubt because English, I don't think, is his first language. So what he might have meant by being predictable is that Alcaraz has worked him out on one occasion, just like how Sinner had worked out Alcaraz on grass at Wimbledon. So there is a bit of a cat and mouse game here. But one thing that I sort of want to highlight here is that as much as we discuss tactics, how players match up in this rivalry and stuff, there is a distinct difference in how this rivalry or any other rivalry might shape up in future because of how pervasive coaching is now. Like you allow coaching in the match. Earlier, it used to be just outside the match. And if you actually look at how both coaches have spoken about their players in the aftermath of their immediate big successes, like Darren Cahill after Wimbledon, he had a press conference. Juan Carlos Ferrero after US Open had a press conference. I don't think we had press conferences arranged at Grand Slam levels by winning coaches before. This should itself tell you how big coaching has become. It's becoming more and more like football because the coaches are working not just off the court in preparing the players, but also during the match. So I would say it's like these coaches are brothers in arms to these players. So it's tennis, I don't think, is any longer a one-on-one sport. Admittedly, you still have to do stuff on your own, but you always have this confidence that you can go back and get some advice from somebody. I wouldn't put it to being saying that they are getting it easy, but it is a lot more sophisticated and a lot of data stuff, inputs. And Alcaraz mentioned that he took a 15-day coaching break just to solve the Sinner puzzle. And Sinner did something similar after losing the French Open final. So these are all points to note. And I think coaches were enablers before, now they are very much active participants in the coaches, in the players' trajectories.
Oh, that's interesting. So you feel that the coaching on court now has actually helped players, and that's not just for these two. It's for the entire tour, right? That the
Yeah,
players have definitely benefited from that.
yes, they would, but it is still not equal, right? Because like somebody like Sumit Nagal can't have Andy Murray sitting in his corner, while Djokovic can afford to have Andy Murray sitting in his corner. So it is still skewed to a certain extent, but in an equal battle like Sinner versus Alcaraz, I think coaching both away from the court in how their players are prepping up and those tiny little nudges on the court. I'm not saying that these two coaches are playing the match through their players, but the input and the confidence that you have somebody to bank on will matter. It doesn't allow you to feel so lonely on the court.
You mentioned about this quote that Sinner made of being predictable, becoming predictable rather.
I was very predictable today, on court. Now it's gonna be on me if I want to make changes or not.
It was interesting that he said that he was even willing to lose matches to become a more whole player. While Alcaraz, on the other hand, has sort of already evolved into a complete player with a range of tricks up his sleeve. So, how do you foresee this rivalry playing out? And are there any factors that could influence it into them becoming more complete players?
I would say that Sinner saying that he is predictable is more of maybe he thinks he has hit a plateau, so he needs more solutions to what Alcaraz might do in future. And Alcaraz also changed a bit, like you said this time. Like it was not fully flashy. He was willing to wait. He was willing to hit an extra shot to see what Sinner was going to do. It was not like he was drop shotting at every instant. Like if he sees an opportunity, he used to drop shot before. And there was some tempering of his flashiness, which might be the evolution in Alcaraz's play. And Sinner sort of acknowledges it, and he might feel that he might not get as many chances as he used to get against a very flashy and super attacking Alcaraz. So by saying predictable, I prima facie feel that what he meant was maybe he hit a plateau. How do I see this rivalry go forward? I think there are a lot of multiple layers to peel off. We are still seeing the very early stages. Like you mentioned very early, we sort of assumed that Sinner was better on hard and Carlos Alcaraz on the natural surfaces, clay and grass. But this year has sort of upended everything. There's a Sinner could have won Roland Garros. He won Wimbledon. He lost US Open. So there is a proper tide that has turned there. I think the next year is going to be very fascinating to see what improvements each player brings to counter the other. One other thing that I want to sort of mention is just after Wimbledon, somebody asked Darren Cahill, like, how do you prepare for the player like Alcaraz? So he mentioned that while we do prepare for a player like Alcaraz, we do prepare a player for the full tour. It's not like we are just competing against the one person. For now, it feels like there's just two players playing tennis. Like it just feels like the final is foregone conclusion as long as these two are seeded 1 and 2, and they're not going to meet before the final. But deep down, every player also prepares to face the entire field. So the next year will be very fascinating as to who the challenger will be for these two guys and how these two guys challenge each other as well.
And I think with any great rivalry, we also consider their off-field image and sort of persona that they have. And I think we should quickly mention also, like, although Alcaraz does have this charm and all of that energy that people really get from him. There's also been, on Sinner's side, he's been embroiled in this doping controversy earlier this year, and sort of let off easily with what most consider a slap on the wrist. I think we even did a whole podcast on that where you spoke on that. But does this doping controversy sort of like mar Sinner's image and possibly even his legacy even if he goes on to win slams like this?
I think the perception did take a hit in the immediate aftermath of it, but long run, I don't think it's going to be a big asterisk, because we have had past players who have gone through this. Martina Hingis has gone through this. I think Agassi has spoken about it in his autobiography as well. So I don't think it's going to sort of put a big asterisk at the end of his career. But in the immediate aftermath of it, like you said, I think a lot of people did feel genuinely that he was let off. I think in due course, the anger will be more at the process, how it's being done, how it seems to be favoring those with big money and big lawyers who can afford big lawyers, and not just like it is skewed against the top players, is what, in terms of the resources it needs to fight a doping battle and who gets the resources. So I think in due course, the anger and the improvements, anger should be directed more towards the process, and the improvement should come there, so that people don't feel aggrieved that a top player gets away while a not so top player doesn't get away.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, early days for both of these players who are still in their early 20s. When we talk about the new two and then the big three, I think it's sort of premature to maybe compare their careers as a whole, because the big three of Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic have all 20 plus slams. But how do you think Sinner and Alcaraz would, maybe match up to the big three in their prime? I know it's always hard to compare eras, but maybe you can give us an idea of how they fare, maybe in terms of style or numbers or influence or whatever it may be that is setting these two apart compared to those three in their prime.
Yeah, like you mentioned, it's very hard to compare the eras, but I feel the big difference this rivalry has with other rivalries that we have seen in the past, be it Federer, Nadal, until Djokovic came on, and then you had the big three, was I think it's more even. The Alcaraz Sinner rivalry is more even. The earlier rivalries was more chalk and cheese, I feel, because Rafa first burst on clay, Federer on grass, and Novak on hard. And that's an image of them which stayed until the end of the careers. And even now, when we see that, we do associate the three surfaces with each of those players, which doesn't tend to happen with Sinner and Alcaraz, primarily because the courts have also become so much more homogeneous. I mean, I'm not saying that clay and grass are similar, but they are closer than ever before. So there is an all court style which helps these players succeed on all surfaces. There is an incentive for you to develop such an all court game, so that you can survive or not even survive, actually excel on all these four surfaces. But when Federer, Nadal broke through, they was very closely associated with just one surface. They did go on to be capable players on the other two surfaces also. That's what defines their greatnesses, and that's what fetched them 66 grand slams between them. But I feel those rivalries were a bit more chalk and cheese. I think the only occasion when a rivalry in the previous era felt very even was when Djokovic met Federer on hard courts. But apart from that, we would always have a favorite before a match. Like if Rafa is playing Federer at Roland Garros, you know who the favorite is. If Federer is playing Djokovic or Nadal on grass at Wimbledon, we know who the favorite is. But with Sinner and Alcaraz, there is still that element of surprise that nobody is betting on somebody wholeheartedly all the way saying this guy is the favorite, the other guy is the underdog. So this, I feel, is the big difference. But it may change because it's still just 15 matches old. They have met far too many times in the last 2 years, so it just suddenly feels like they are just there everywhere. Men's tennis is just about these two players, but I think they are still 22 and 23, and in the next years we will see multiple layers of their rivalry unfolding.
So what becomes now of the old man Djokovic, who's 38 years old now and who's kind of stuck at 24 slams? I mean, it's not a bad place to be stuck at the top of the charts with most number of slams in men's tennis history. But is this maybe the end of the road for him when it comes to furthering that record?
End of the road would be a bit harsh, because somebody who makes 4 semifinals in 4 majors in a calendar year at 38, he must be pretty damn good. But I do get the point that you're making. by his own admission, he feels that in best of five Grand Slams, it's increasingly tough for him to beat these two guys, which is true. Now, as long as these guys are 1 and 2, Djokovic has to beat both. So there's no escaping that unless he lands in the opposite draw to one of the two guys and he has to beat just one. But Djokovic has run remarkably well to just stay in touch, I would say, because tennis is replete with a lot of freak injuries. Like, look at what happened in the Cincinnati final. Just imagine if Djokovic lands in the final with Sinner at some Masters or even in a Grand Slam, and suddenly an illness comes or some freak injury happens and the opponent is not able to play at his full level. I don't think we can begrudge anybody for winning any Grand Slam that way, because you can only beat the person who is in front of you, and you did pretty well to reach that stage. So I think Djokovic staying in touch with these guys, giving himself chance after chance or chance after chance to just meet them and an opportunity to beat them. It's a different matter whether he's able to do it or not, but I will give him credit for just staying in touch. Djokovic seems to feel that it's just physical. At 38, he's not able to physically match, which is true. But there is also this feeling that I am getting of late is that he's not able to match up to their play as well, because he used to have winning patterns against other players at his prime. Like, for example, against Nadal, he would just pin Nadal to the backhand corner. That used to be one of his winning tactics. Of late, he's not able to do that, both with Sinner and Alcaraz. I think one of the best performances of Djokovic against Alcaraz was at the Australian Open this year, where he beat him. But it took so much out of him that in the next match, he had to sort of virtually retire against Alexander Zverev. But in best of two, he's still able to do that. The Olympics final last year was one great example. But against Sinner, he has lost 5 in a row. In the US Open final, he was pretty handsomely beaten by Alcaraz in the semifinals, I think. So I would say that physical is one part of it, but increasingly tactics-wise, play-wise, also he's not able to match these two. So beating them in a best of five Grand Slam at this stage seems beyond him, because he doesn't have age on his side as well. He's 38 already. So yeah, I think we should trust Djokovic when he says that it's getting difficult to beat these guys.
Yeah, of course, but doing all this at 38 is still quite the achievement, like you said. Yeah, as the big three kind of moved into their sunset years in the past few years, there was so much speculation of who would succeed them, and I think we expected big things from the likes of Medvedev, Zverev, Thiem, Tsitsipas, all of whom I think have sort of failed to live up to those expectations. Mostly, I think because Djokovic's continued success was there. And there was also, a thought that if there was not going to be a dominance like this again, maybe there would be the sort of revolving door of champions rather than just a coterie of players dominating for a while. But this transition has, I think, happened almost instantly over the 2022 to 2024, those 3 years. So my question is this duopoly sort of thing good for tennis, and where does it leave the others on the ATP tour?
I think for now, tennis has a emotional hook for the fans to sort of latch onto. But overall health, I think you do need two more contenders. Because for all the big three dominance, when we saw in the previous era, Murray was a legend in his own terms. He won 3 Grand Slams, and he also reached umpteen finals. And Wawrinka won 3. So that I'm not seeing happening in this era. Like, there are not even signs. The players you mentioned, Thiem, Medvedev, Zverev, I think they were all called the sandwich generation. It does seem like they are losing out big time. Like, Medvedev is a truly good player, and he won the 2021 US Open. He is on a downward spiral. He could have so easily had 5 hardcourt slams. I think he has lost those many finals, both in Australia and New York. And Zverev is the third best, but he couldn't take advantage when Sinner was out of action for 3 months. And Sinner was the world number 1 through the 3-month absence from the tour. So that says a lot about how the rest of the tour is shaping up. And Zverev's points is 5,000 odd, and the person above him, Sinner, has 10,000 odd. So it's almost like double. And Tsitsipas seems to have lost interest. Casper Ruud, after 3 Grand Slam finals, seems to have stagnated. Fritz and Shelton don't seem to have it in them to go above a certain level. Musetti is a terrific player, but he reaches the quarters, he may reaches the semis, but not above that level. As of now, it's just a duopoly. Top two seems like a good rivalry to build the sport around, but if it continues for 2 or 3 more years, it just gets too boring and might not be in the overall health of the sport.
Yeah, that's true. Apart from the sandwich generation, are there any new names that we can look forward to maybe in the next year, or any up and coming youngsters?
I think last year there was a lot of interest in Fonseca, how he played and how big he hits the ball. He is already top 50. So people are betting on him to do well. I would actually go to one of these players in the sandwich generation itself. Casper Ruud is a very eminently coachable player, pretty good, and I think he can really improve. I don't know if he will, but he has the tennis to actually be really good, and he can be coached very well, is what I can feel. And I would actually like one of Medvedev's Zverev to sort of take it up a notch above and challenge these guys, because it's not like it's beyond them. It's true that Alcaraz and Sinner have taken the game to a much higher level, but that should act as enough motivation for these guys to sort of match up, because that's how rivalries are sustained. Like when the big three rivalry went long for as long as it did, because each player was ready to improve by looking at the other player. Like Djokovic took the fitness to a certain level, Nadal and Federer matched up, and Nadal and Federer were so good on their respective surfaces that Djokovic thought that was inspiring enough for him to improve. So I hope Sinner's and Alcaraz's success sort of acts as an inspiration for the sandwich generation to come up. But I am really excited about how Fonseca is looking. So next year might be exciting.
Okay, yeah, and just we've been talking about fans and the sporting culture that we have. I think we tend to gravitate to big stars and dominant forces. Did you witness any such fan wars between these two, Sinner, Alcaraz, or anybody else, or even on social media when you, as in, did you witness any of these at Wimbledon or even on social media for that matter?
Not much, I would say. I think people are still talking about these two as a unit. There's not much of divided loyalty yet. I think we're also colored by the previous rivalries, the ones you mentioned at the start of the program, like Borg McEnroe, Sampras Agassi, Nadal Federer. But there is nothing very distinctly different between Sinner and Alcaraz yet, I would say. Because in all the other 3 rivalries I just mentioned, and you also mentioned at the start, there has always been a hunter and the hunted. I think this rivalry is still not there. It may get there, but as of now, it still feels a bit even. People are more curious about which player is going to improve, how, and what are they going to do in the next year, rather than pinning the hopes on just one player and wanting him to win at all costs. They are still looking at the whole rivalry as a unit, is what the impression I get.
And I think finally, before we end, I think we should also mention the women's US Open champion Aryna Sabalenka. Though not an outright domination like maybe Sinner, Alcaraz at the slams, she's had a few stellar years at the top. And is this something also that's sort of brewing in the women's tennis circuit?
I think the women's tennis circuit, like you said or hinted, it is settling. I would say Sabalenka has one of the best 3-year periods in Grand Slams in recent times. She has played 11 Grand Slams. She has won 4. She has made 3 finals, 3 semifinals, and 1 quarters. Now, that is just unreal consistency across surfaces. And all 4 slams may have come on hard court, but she has been good on clay and grass. And her 2 losses to Coco Gauff in Grand Slam finals, I think 2023 US Open and 2025 French Open, in both the matches she was ahead. So she could have so easily had 6 out of the 11 Grand Slams she competed, which in women's tennis of recent times, ever since Serena sort of faded away, has been pretty tough to see. Like, Shiontek was good on clay, but maybe not at other places, which she is also changing now. She won Wimbledon. She is a past year's Open champion, but Sabalenka in the last 3 years has been by far the most consistent player. There have been times when sort of she's been very emotionally uh, attached, or emotions have sort of got the better of her in crunch situations. But this US Open, she was pretty remarkably calm. I think she lost a serve when she was serving for the match, but she stayed calm and collected. She got through the match, which she might not have, which she didn't until recently. Like, she did lose a topsy-turvy match at Wimbledon to Anisimova, and she also lost that final to Coco Gauff at Roland Garros, which was just wild fortune swinging both sides. So I feel that she has been remarkably consistent, and US Open might just be a good sign that there are many more titles in her.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, really exciting also what's going on in women's circle. But yeah, great. I guess that's all the time we have today. I think all of us are excited to see what's in store, especially for these two guys in the years to come. And it will be interesting to see if and how Sinner and Alcaraz evolve with the game. Appreciate your insights today, Sudarshan. To those listening in, I highly recommend your pieces, particularly the analytical ones. So thanks once again. It was great talking to you today.
Thank you so much, Reuben, for having me here. It was a pleasure.
In Focus will be back soon with analysis of the biggest news issues. In the meantime, you can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and other platforms. Just search for In Focus by The Hindu. We'll see you soon.